Hello, beautiful humans of Earth. Welcome to the first episode of a series where I interview and speak with interesting humans with very interesting perspectives. Today we have... What's your name, sir?
Oliver Halsman Rosenberg.
Oliver Halsman Rosenberg. Here with us in the beautiful nature of New York. So, Oliver, let's pretend that I have no clue who you are. Let's begin with your upbringing, maybe some past history. Like, where were you born?
I was born in New York City. Spent my first years in New York. Folks relocated to the suburbs just outside the city, but I always had that family in New York, so got the best of both worlds. Got a lawn to kind of run around on, but also like exposed to the art world of New York on the weekends. So I'm kind of like a quantum particle. It's like if you put me under a microscope, I kind of move around, and it's like hard to pin down and give like straight answers like these. But let's just say as a child, I realized that the two things that made me happy were to make art and to travel, and I kind of made a promise to myself to honor that inner child. So as an adult, I just tried to remember what made me happy before I was a part of like any system, and doing what I can to cultivate and participate in that like innocent dream of mine back then. So spend my life, doing all sorts of interesting creative projects and traveling as much as I can. Yeah.
Talking about these interesting creative projects,
There's no picture on the screen. Is
Oh,
that
yeah.
a good thing?
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Saving battery. Okay.
One, it saves battery, and then two, when I have it on my head, people can't tell if I'm recording or
I
not.
see. Okay.
But I should have that on.
In frame either.
This
It's all in
grand,
frame. Okay.
this grand picture is in frame. But talking about
It is a grand picture.
it is. So talking about your creative projects, can you share with us one of the creative projects that you're currently engaging in?
Wow, I'm doing a lot currently, so it's hard to know what to choose.
Tell me one that like the one project that you're doing that you'd say is the most interesting. I'm sure all the projects are interesting,
So I
but
think
like
as an artist, you spend your life arriving at your own visual vocabulary.
Right.
I think, like early in your art career, you're like inspired by other people, and you kind of copy intentionally and then maybe unintentionally, and you're always kind of looking for your own language, and some people never find it, and some people just end up copying others' innovations, which is fine. I think there's a lot of pressure in the visual arts on like originality, whereas like in other art forms like music, if you're a really good classical pianist, it's like you want to sound like the composer or whatever. So there's certain biases like within the visual arts compared to other arts, but
right.
I feel like I've always been looking for my voice, and like a lot of voices have emerged from like calligraphy to certain stylistic line work that are always trying to communicate something specific. Like for me, art is about, it starts with an idea and then the kind of visuals come in to support the idea.
Yes.
And, you know, I kind of am like someone who's very comfortable with like exploring technology as well as really rudimentary, like archaic styles of just like drawing and scratching and sanding, and you know, so it's like I run the whole spectrum. So I have like a bunch of different projects I'm working on simultaneously, and that just keeps my brain really active to just be able to jump from one to the other.
Right.
But
how do you do this without spreading yourself too thin?
well,
Because I find myself kind of engaging with many forms of artwork, and like I'm realizing that I need to kind of start focusing on like one form. But I do get a lot of creative inspiration from engaging with many mediums. So
I think it's important to follow the muse, right?
Right.
Like, the creative
So
spirit.
what's the muse to you?
What's the muse is when you get out of the way of your ego and what you want to create and just let the creativity flow through you.
Right.
So, you know, for my life, what I've recognized is that there's things happen cyclically.
Yes.
There's like a pattern. So maybe I'll work on a body of work for 6 months and then I won't pick it up for another 3 years, and then I'll get inspired to revisit it. Or then in 6 years I'll weave it into something else I'm working on. So I give myself a freedom to not be trapped in one thing.
I love that.
Now, I mean,
Nice.
for better or worse, because there's some artists that essentially focus on one thing and they do it over and over and over, and they get known for that one thing, and that brings them, you know, recognition.
Right.
But at the same time, you know, maybe they feel trapped in that one thing, whereas I give myself permission to like do anything and everything and allow the patterns to appear over time.
Yeah. So what patterns are appearing over time right now?
Yeah,
I'm very
it's
curious.
It's an interesting moment. Like I have. So I've been doing like this one series of drawings that,
Okay.
you know, usually when I go on the subway, I would take like an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper
Right.
and I'd fold it in half one way and then in half the other. So then
Like
I
a
get this
card.
like accordion thing.
Oh.
So I have like 8 little rectangles that I can draw on. And it was like the perfect thing when you're like in a limited space, and then I'd do these like little drawings, like everyone's on their cell phone, and I wanted something cell phone size that I could just like work on the subway instead
Okay.
of, you know, the endless scroll.
Yes.
So I've developed this kind of like vocabulary of these like subway no mind doodles, and I've just been like,
Careful with this ice.
yeah. I've been giving myself an opportunity to like perfect the imperfection of drawing on a moving vehicle.
Okay.
Because I'm gonna get like lines not being straight, but I like that kind of wabi-sabiness
Yes.
of it. And but then I was just in Nicaragua on this like volcanic island, and it was just full of like flowers and plants and leaves and trees and ancient petroglyphs like in the landscape that an ancient culture had like carved into, and like all of a sudden that kind of line work
Right.
like took on this form of like nature and plants and trees. And I don't know, it was a very interesting series that started happening there. But
Nice.
that's nothing that like I really like show anywhere. It's just kind of like the practice. Like I
Right.
think, you know, whether you're a musician or an athlete, you know, it's like going to the gym for me.
Yes.
Like that's just like, okay, I'm keeping the muscle loose, I'm keeping the mind open, I'm keeping like the hand, you know, and there's always something to discover. Like oftentimes in my work I feel like I'm witnessing what's happening through me, And I really like that quality. I like a lot of the art I do with technology is I also try to bring that kind of mystery into a more like rigid system of art. Like digital arts can be like very precise, but I've been using AI for like 2.5 years. So
Doing what?
Well, we can get into that. But but just to say that, like, for me, creativity is really like opening yourself up to that unexpected creative force to channel through you and being, you know, surprised by the results. Now you can also be like a Leonardo da Vinci who's got all your geometry mapped into a portrait, and it's like a super precise code that you're trying to express too. And that, so like, that's why I love art, because it's like the only thing left on the planet that doesn't have like rules and laws, and it's really like it's really freedom. Like art and meditation, like creativity and meditation is like the ultimate freedom on this planet.
Yes.
And you know, you can loop dance into that, or music, like everything that falls under the arts, you know.
I love that.
Yeah, wow, look at this waterfall.
Yeah. Dude, this place is magic.
Oh my god, it's so magic.
Sometimes it freezes.
Yeah.
I'm glad that it's not frozen, because it looks better in flow like this.
Should we do like a cold plunge?
Dude, I'm all for it.
I remember I was in Iceland once.
Yeah.
And like, you're literally in like this kind of a climate, like where you're bundled up, but then there's like a natural hot springs, and there's like all these naked people just like next to you, and then you're looking for a free spot to strip down to get in yourself. But it's just like that crazy like difference between like I'm freezing and that person's boiling, and we're like sharing the space. But
yeah,
this is
magnificent.
Magnificent.
Yeah. So part of the interview I forgot to mention is we got to keep moving.
Okay.
So because it's one
right?
long. Yeah. So it's like one long take.
One
like
4-hour podcast.
Yeah, there are no cuts to this.
Oh, there are no cuts. Oh
yeah.
My God.
So
this is gonna be an interesting journey.
Yeah.
No cuts means no edits.
Maybe there will be cuts, but for now I think it's gonna be one entire video.
Color. Look at that.
Right? It looks so good.
Minerals in there.
All right, Oliver.
All right, Paris.
So
where are we?
So let's talk about spirituality and your perspective on the current landscape of spirituality, and how is your work influenced by spirituality?
I mean, spirituality, it's such a loaded word. I think,
what is it? What is being spiritual to you?
Yeah. I mean, I think spirituality is like feeling a connection to all things.
Nice.
You know, pre-mental thought.
Right.
Like organized system of beliefs, and all things spring from your connection and your perception with all things. So like as an artist, if you have a spiritual basis, like everything you create is going to be originating from that center point.
Yeah.
Or if your focus in life is like wealth, then like everything you do is going to be focused, you know, originating from like that point being your like center point. So like we're just gonna have to strip layers away to answer like this kind of a question.
Yeah.
Like what are you doing here on this planet in this body with your consciousness? It's like free will. like, okay, like there's certain things destined to happen, but like you have the power to decide how to perceive and engage with your surroundings. And I found through like practical experiences that how you feel internally is what is reflected back externally. And like, it's kind of a cliched thing to say, but it's true. And I think there are a lot of true cliches that it sounds really good to say, but like it means more when you actually have like lived it.
Yes.
So I know for sure that like where we are inside is where we are outside, but when you're not
right.
at that place, it just seems like that's crazy talk.
Right. So you're saying us living in the concrete jungle of New York City is a reflection of our internal state.
But it's not the where. It's the like how you choose to be in that moment with whatever is around you.
Okay.
Whether harmony or not. You know, if Tibetans can like be, Tibetan monks and nuns can be tortured in a prison and still feel like love and compassion for like the people torturing them, then surely you can like get through the urban landscape and like find your peace there and your harmony like in the moment. Now, like we are frequential beings and like we will feel more naturally at home in one place over another. But again, it's like that's where the work is. That's where you're like, ooh, why do I feel out of harmony here now? Like, let me just look and breathe and find my center place and like, you know, take the next step. But
what's your center place?
Oh, it's stillness always. And I think that gets back to like what I was previously talking about, which is like a spiritual life. It's like once you like arrive at that center point of stillness where there's no one to be, nothing to achieve, nothing to acquire, you know, it's all coming and flowing and going, then every step and breath after that is one of like peace and service.
Yes.
So, and then through art, you know, it's like, well, what do I want to use art for? Like, how can art be a teaching tool? Or so when we were talking about spirituality and the art practice or the life practice, it's like, I think philosophy is really interesting. I love reading like philosophy from different cultures, and you know, from quantum physics to like, you know, non-dualistic Kashmiri shaivism. Like I went through a phase of life where I was like reading as many books as possible, and like by the time I finished one, I couldn't even remember what I read because I was absorbed in the next. And then I would, you know, have a bookshelf full of books and I absorbed everything, but it was like I was just like an information junkie. And then I had
what phase of your life was this?
Wait, let me just finish this thought.
Okay.
I had whatever experiences I needed to have where, you know, even at a certain point, one of my teachers was like, don't buy another book. And I'm like, but no, like that scripture talked about like a 6-pointed purple hexagon and it's like from 3,000 years ago. And like, what were they saying? I need to get the right translation so I can like understand this sacred geometry embedded in this like obscure Vedic text. And he was just like, stop buying books. And like at a certain point, like I stopped buying books, and then the book of life opens up, you know what I mean? Then it's like your teachers are like, the sages are like the way the water's flowing.
The wind.
You know?
The wind.
Whatever it is. It's
the way
like
the water flows, too, for sure.
It's all energy.
Right.
You know? And when we like quiet down and observe energy, we find there's like a different rhythm happening in our life, and then we can, you know, there's a great peace that's found there, and then you can come back out into like the real world and like serve and act, you know, from that place of stillness. What phase was I in? I think that's just like the adept phase, you know. It's like you're trying to learn as much as you can. You're the student, you know. You take teachers. You like.
Were you
read
taking
books.
photographs at this time? Oh, all right. Let's kind of like
always
go
taking
back and talk.
photographs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What photographs did you really start out with? Like, what kind of photography were you? Okay, talking about photography, we have to mention the history that and the influence photography has had, and the influence you have had and your family has had on photography. Can you share?
Yeah, well, my grandfather was a genius, you know. He's I mean, I'm just rebuilding his website, and I'm like trying to like
What's the website?
pick the top pictures for his opening slideshow and all the book covers and magazine covers.
We'll put in the link in the description,
So,
actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to be like a part of a lineage with like a genius level creator who like shaped the world.
Right.
Because like on one hand, you're incredibly inspired from an early age, and it all seems natural, and you have access to like visual as like an artist. Like I was just exposed to like visual things that not everybody is going to be exposed to from such a young age.
Like what? Like what do you recall seeing your grandfather doing?
Well, he passed pretty soon, but just to grow up around like the art that he collected, or his work, his own work, you know. So like everything from like surrealism to like intense psychological portraits to like sculptures they collected from around the world. So it's like this weird mix of like surrealism and tribalism and pan-global, you know, like ancient artifacts.
Nudity.
So nudity wasn't a big deal because they're European, and it was just, you know, my mom used to buy me National Geographics and Playboys at the yard sales as a kid, and it just seemed like supernatural.
Oh yeah.
To me. So like I don't have like these.
And would you say that
hang-ups
would you say that this has an influence on the current work that you create?
Well, again, this gets back to like the current work, and like there's been a series of like adorning people's bodies with calligraphy that I've done pre-photography and then with photography. And for sure that's
so you started that project before you were taking photos?
Oh, for sure.
Oh, wow.
I mean, look, I've always been taking photos, but like I reached a point in my life where I was like, you know what? My grandfather was such a legend that like and I love photography, but I was like, I don't want to achieve anything in life based on like opportunities that were given to me through nepotism. Like I would never feel comfortable knowing whether like I've succeeded based on my own merits and skills or just on doors opening because of like some lineage. So I was like, I'm gonna do everything except photography.
Ooh, okay.
So that kind of started a journey of like, I'm gonna do painting and drawing and sculpture and site-specific work and like community-based projects and like technology and AI and what, you know. I was just like, I'm going to embrace everything except for photography, which included like painting on my own body, which was like a practice that like I had seen through the National Geographics as a kid, just like with other tribes, and wondering like why that doesn't exist within our culture.
Okay.
And granted, this is like whatever, I'm 47 years old. This is like 20 years ago, that like before body painting became like a thing. I was just like painting on myself. I would just put like something, and then I went to Burning Man, and it was like I saw that there was more permission to really be myself. And then people were like, oh, I like how you paint on yourself, paint on me. And then I started painting on other people, and then I was doing a project called Perpetual Epiphany Galactic Travel Agency, which was like this surrealistic notion of like painting codes on people's bodies, and that was like
what kind of codes?
It was like with my channeled calligraphy. So there's like this whole other like channeled calligraphy that I do. Again, it's like a lot of my work comes from a place of no mind. It's like this Buddhist, like Zen concept of like everything you approach as if you're doing it for the first time.
Right.
So like when you pick up a pencil, it's like if you've never drawn before, like how does that move? Or you know, so like I just started downloading all these calligraphic codes and putting them on skin, and then like tuning into like the structure of the body and the geometry of the body, like the energetic structure of the body, and just channeling things right onto people's bodies. And then that opened up tattooing because people were like, I want this tattoo. And that also opened up like photography because I was in India at the time and I was just like painting on people as like this impermanent offering. You know, this also gets back into like art as an offering. So like when I graduated art school and I saw what the art world was,
Right.
I was like, oh, this isn't what I thought when I was a kid. And I was just going to like churches in Europe and like seeing sculptures and stained glass and museums. And like, you know, as a kid, you think art is something. And then when I became an adult and I realized it was like a very commerce-based thing, and I'm living in a time period that's very like not spiritual, and like art is about commodity and it's not about necessarily like elevating the spirit or helping people connect to the spirit. I was like, ugh. So like the calligraphy just became like one of these tools of like bringing art into the daily practice, like as an offering. It's temporary, it's impermanent, so it gets back into like philosophy and spirituality about impermanence, you know, making something precious that's going to go away over the time. So, you know, and allowing myself to like let go my work, you know, not put like a price tag on it, or it's a thing. It's just like, hey, it's a gift for you in this moment. We're sharing it together. I'm holding you. You're feeling me holding you. I'm feeling like the pulse of your veins and blood pumping as I'm holding you. So like, I don't know, it became this very like intimate form of like sharing art. But then I was traveling with like this amazing Dutch girl who was my lover at the time, and there was a Spanish photographer, and you know, the Spanish photographer was like, why don't you paint your girlfriend's body and I'm gonna go take her out into the woods and do a photo shoot with her. And I was like, okay, you know. And I look back at these photos and they're so basic compared to like what I'm doing now. Basic in the sense of what I was doing, not the photography, but like I just did it, and then they disappeared, and they came back, and they were like, they had some kind of psychedelic experience. Like the girl was like, oh my God, I was just like running around naked in the woods, and I just was seeing spirits and like floating lights, and like, you know, they just had this magical experience. I was like, huh, that's interesting. And like let's do it again. Or then I started working with other photographers and at that point, like I still was in my like, well, I'm not a photographer, I'm everything but a photographer. So I let them have their shoots, and I kind of learned, you know, at that point I was like looking over their shoulders, seeing how they were doing their shoots, and I was like, all right, well, this photographer is a little more commercial than how I would do it. Oh, they're shooting it in a studio, like I would do it like this in nature. And then I started working with another woman in Tulum, this amazing woman, Paulina, and she saw me painting on my girl. This is a couple years later, on my partner at the time, and she invited us to like live with her for a couple months, and then she started meeting all these girls. And this was Tulum 2012, so before kind of Instagram geotagging took over. So it was a very different place. It was a very different place. Right. And then I was like, you know, then it was really like, okay, a new girl every like couple days. So it brought me more into the practice of, I don't know, it developed my skill set. But her pictures, they were artistic, but they were a little more fashiony than I would do it myself. So I kept on thinking to myself, like, well, if I was doing this myself, how different would it be? And Paulina took great pictures, but I was like finding the models, like driving to the location, doing the painting, like being her assistant, you know, carrying the bag. And I was like, I'm pretty much doing everything except taking the pictures. So then I just started a new chapter where I was like, okay, I'm gonna just do the whole thing myself and just do it as like a ritual. And you know, it's just the two people. It's just like the muse and the photographer, and we're like going out into nature. And the whole thing was like,
I love that,
to try to imagine the world like pre technological culture. So finding like a beautiful location without any other people, and like then, you know, allowing the model to like really drop in and channel like her archetype, and just witnessing it and just like being there with the camera and just like allowing that
To
energy
unfold.
of the moment to like dance. And I've done these other projects like in Japan where I'll photograph Buto dancers, and I'll like literally be with the camera, you know, like as they're dancing, like the photography becomes a dance too. And like, I don't know, it's just like you both drop into this like other realm of creativity, and you know, the model forgets that she's just, and I think like it's just trying to get back to this place. Like it's I just feel like it's all that it's in our history, it's in our DNA, it's in everyone's ancestry. We all are one family. We all came out of like a certain, I think it's like Sudan in Africa. So it's like as the branches spread around the world, like every culture has like done painting and ceremonies and decorated themselves, but it's only in the West we've become so disconnected, but so alienated by like our own bodies. And like, you know, America's such a melting pot, so everyone kind of gives up the traditions of their homeland and joins this like Coca-Cola monoculture, that like we've lost a lot of that. So I just wanted to like reinsert these kind of images of like strong women, you know, back into like the collective subconscious. So that's like one other project that I'm like working on. But then I'll take I'll paint on someone and take the picture, and then I'll print the picture in a dark room. And like every creative thing I do, like there's always like multiple steps. So it's like, okay, well now I've done this, what can I do next, and how can I take that and transform that into something else? So it's kind of like this journey of play. Like again, I'll come back to the word play in creativity. I think play is really like my favorite word to talk about when I talk about creativity, because you look at children and it's like a stick is a magic wand, or it's a gun, or you know, a rock is a fruit, or it's the, you know, like,
or a grenade.
I didn't want to say it, but yeah, sure, it can be. It can be anything, and that's the beauty. It's like sometimes you see kids playing. I travel a lot in the world, and you see kids here who have like big piles of plastic toys that they don't look at, you know, like a week or two after they get them, and all the landfill that creates. And then you go to other countries where kids don't have that bounty of toys, but it's just like they're being creative with what's in front of them. And I think that's the ingenuity of the human mind, and that's why we're like tool builders. That's why we figured out how to like, oh look, if I hit these two rocks they split, and this thing's sharp, and ooh, I cut myself, and oh, maybe I can use that as a knife to cut this plant, or an arrow to kill that animal to feed my tribe, you know. So like, I think it all comes out of play. And when we stop as humans exploring through play, you know, it's like play is encouraged in school in all children, and then you get to a point where you're like, well, now you have to study books and like learn facts and get tested, and it's like all of a sudden the magic of life goes away, and you're like, oh, I'm part of this system, I'm a cog in a wheel, and I'm like, oh, if I want to play I have to do it on the weekends, and you know, go to a place where I can forget about what I do during the rest of the week through like alcohol or music or no lights or whatever. So like,
meanwhile you could do it anywhere at any time.
Well, I feel grateful that on a weekday you and I can go into nature and like go on a walk. Like it's nothing, not everyone has the opportunity, but I think that like that's part of the magic where like we can unlock our highest potential, because like essentially play does two things. Like you're in the moment, because like to maintain like the illusion of something, like if I know it's a stick and it's not a gun, it's like then I'm like in reality. But like when you're in that reality where like the object has become something else, you're changing your relationship to like the external world already.
Yes.
And then, you know, everything kind of starts from there. But, you know, a lot of
Right.
adults need, you know, drugs to change their perception on reality, or meditation can change, or like sound bowls can change it, or
Creativity.
certain food can change it, or creativity. So there's all these different tools that
Right.
we can do to change like our state of mind and our perception of the world. And I think that's really like where the kind of like everyday magic is hidden in plain sight, you know. And a lot of people just get too caught up in like the external struggle to achieve a certain thing that
Right.
they stop living their life in the present moment. But everything always unfolds from the present moment, you know. So
Wow.
that's really like where we have to arrive at for like anything to feel fresh. Like when I
Yes.
do creative stuff and I'm coming from that place of no mind or play, like I think about like what kind of art is gonna be, what art has lasted 500 years, what kind of art will last 500 years. And it's, you know, 500, 5,000, you know, 50,000. And it's, you know, you have two things. You either have like the materiality of the object, which will last. So like, but I'm talking more about like the content of the art. And it's something
The
that's
impact.
universal. It's something
Right.
that's universal that people can relate to. You know, whether it's 500 years ago or 500 years from now. So it's like, and what is universal? And what is universal is the now moment. It's just what we're all sharing in the now moment. So, you know, there's so many gimmicks and tricks and things we can put into art, but like, what is really universal? And I feel like as long as we're creating from a place of like universality, like it's gonna be honest. And if it can touch you in the now moment, it's going to be able to touch someone, you know, in a time machine or going each direction. So
I agree.
it's that humanity. It's like the human experience and the struggle of the journey of like, of finding and losing and having and letting go and arriving at a place where you're okay to let it go and make space for something new to arrive. And it's just like that cosmic dance of like, now you have it, now you don't.
Right.
Now you have it, now you don't. And that's like quantum physics to me, you know, and that's non-duality to me. So it's like the ancient philosophers and meditators were seeing in their own meditation what like our great microscopes, you know, and scientists can see now.
Right.
So it's like, it's all the same thing. So as an artist, you know, how do I try to find those qualities authentically within my life, and then either communicate about them or communicate from like a state in which like I'm at one with that
Everything.
aspect of reality.
Right. Hello.
Hello.
Wow, that was a great one.
So, I mean, I'm on the phone all the time with people and they're like, whoa, what did you just say? I'm like, I have no idea. Like, I just,
It's all right.
like, I'm in the moment, and I'm like,
exact. I love that. You know, like those are the moments that I really want to capture within people. That's why I like the idea of like continuing to walk, because like by walking we're like maintaining a rhythm. It's kind of like we're dancing when we walk.
yeah,
So
I like to walk. This is a new walk for me.
yeah.
It's nice. Look at these
This is
stones.
I've passed by this before, and I've always wondered if we can climb it, and I'm sure we can.
Sure, you can climb it. I'm not sure I can climb it.
I would definitely need some crash pads. I think you would be able to climb it.
I like to climb.
But yeah, Oliver, we I should set a timer to see how long we're.
I think
we're
we've been
good.
talking for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, true. That was actually, yeah, it was like, yeah, that was pretty short. let's talk about.
It's endless. It's
It is
infinity in all
endless.
directions.
To be honest, I could film just me and Oliver. Like whenever we get together, I just need to film everything because Oliver has some very interesting perspectives, and it very much aligns with my perspectives of being conscious. Talking about being conscious, what, like, through your work, are you helping humans become more conscious, or is that something that it naturally creates?
So there's like, the Buddhists say that there's like the relative truth and the absolute truth, right?
Yes.
So like the absolute truth is like we're all one.
Right.
There's no separate human who isn't, already made up of the perfection that is everything
Right.
else perfection. It's beyond words. It's like you can't even name it. As soon as you name it, you bring it into duality.
Right.
So, and then you have the like relative truth, which is like we're consciousness embodied in different human forms, and some of us are suffering because we don't feel that we don't have a relationship with that absolute truth.
Right.
So I think as an artist, as like an artist who's taken the bodhisattva vow, as an artist who's had, even to label myself as an artist is like creates, identification. So whatever, as a being who like has a creative instinct, who is like in service, like that takes place in different forms. It takes place as like running my family's archive,
Right.
because then I'm being in service to my family. I'm being
Yes.
in service to like the ancestors, like specifically my lineage and my
Right.
ancestors. Like so many of the cultures that I study, whether it's like through philosophy or art and culture, it's like
Right.
it's always like honor the ancestors,
Preserve
honor
the
the
wisdom.
teachers, so it's
Right.
like that makes up a part of my life. But it's also like, okay, well, I can honor the ancestors and also like do weird AI art with their art, or like make NFTs and get on Twitter Spaces and talk about them. So it's
Right.
like, okay, I can honor the ancestors, but also like it doesn't just mean lighting candles. It also means, doing whatever is now in creative of this moment that's available to us.
We have to turn around.
Why?
I guess there's rules here.
Park property.
Carriage road ends
There's
here.
no loop back to them. All visitors must turn around.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's that.
Yeah. So.
So service.
Yes.
So service takes like many forms.
Right.
So there's like the being in service to the family. There's
Yeah.
being in service to like others. There's being in service to yourself. And there's also recognizing that other beings are suffering, and if I can use art or any other kind of like tools that I'm capable of doing to like help others. Look, we're all on different levels in our spiritual growth,
Right.
Myself included.
Yes. Same.
So, we have the opportunity to like, if we can see someone suffering and we know like there's a way out of that suffering, and we can speak from like our own experience and not just like, oh, I read it in a book,
Right.
because if you read it in a book, all you can do is just like repeat back those certain words, but you can't like extrapolate it on it like in multiple dimensional directions.
Yes. Like
Whereas-
like a stick and a gun.
Yeah, or just like,
Or like
if
Wonder
I
Bread.
just read, if someone just looks at a purple sphere when they're feeling like this, it's gonna align with this chakra and do that. And it's like, if I haven't experienced that for myself, but I start telling everyone that, like, I don't know if that was mistranslated. I don't know if that person who wrote it had a side business where they're trying to sell purple crystal balls.
For sure.
You know, so.
Yes.
But if I've had that my experience myself, and I've been like, oh, it actually works, and it works because of A, B, and C, but you don't have to use purple, you can also use this, and it doesn't have to be crystal, it can also just be a glass of water with a candle. You know, it's like, so I think people should only like be giving like spiritual advice from, like, that's the difference between knowledge and wisdom. Like, knowledge is when you can just like, you have a lot of facts and figures memorized, and you can like say things that sound good, and wisdom is when you've had your own experience and your own journey, and you're like sharing that truth. So that kind of gets infused in my art, whether I'm like building a Web3 community for creatives to collaborate, or whether I'm like doing a doodle on the subway about like impermanence and wabi-sabi and embracing the imperfection. Like, I was on the subway last week, and some people sat down next to me just to watch me draw. And then I had one stop before I had to get off. They started speaking to me, and then all of a sudden that opened up an opportunity. They're like, you're drawing the line so straight, like, into the train's moving. And then all of a sudden I like gave like a little sermon on like impermanence and wabi-sabi and embracing imperfection, and how we live in a culture that's so focused on perfection that like no one can feel authentic. And like all of a sudden, like there was like all these people on the train
started, like,
listening to me, and like that's the beauty of art. And then I got off on that stop, and I don't know what happened after that, but it's like then those girls were talking to this couple who were sitting across from me. And the subway is great in New York because it's like you know, everyone is from a different background and they're going to a different place. So it's like, I did this one project in San Francisco in like 2004. I was running like a nonprofit alternative art space on 24th Street in the Mission, and I just put a sandwich board. We had like a little storefront we were running like a gallery art studio from, and I just said like free portraits day. So like strangers would come in and they would sit down for me, and I would just paint their portrait for them and just like give it to them like as an offering. These were like beautiful little like gouache paintings. And my whole idea was like, well, it all starts with a seed or a spark of like, of an offering, of a gift. So if I can give this person a gift in this moment, like who knows how that will ripple out the rest of the day. Like maybe
which it does.
They'll see somebody and give something to them, or they'll just be in a better mood and hold the door open for someone to do it, and that person will, like, it's all like ripples in energy and intention. I think that's like a lot. So like everything I'm describing is like how we can use art like as magic in the real world. And there's no books on this or anything in your courses. This is just like, you have to follow your instinct. I remember this is reminding me of like another thing. I was doing like a projection, like in San Francisco, like a friend was making music, and I had one of these like overhead projectors, like the old school ones where you could put like different things on top, and it was not like a USB connected projector. But he was doing this like weird experimental music, and I like made all these weird shadow puppets and had all these lenses, and I was kind of like making this live animation to like what he was doing. And this girl came up to me with a notebook, and she's like, I go to CCAC, which was like the local art school, and she's like, what technique were you using for that? And which technique was this? And I'm like, these are techniques. Like, I was like, I just was making stuff up as I went along. And again, that gets back to play. Like, you know, she was convinced that like I was using these techniques that, you know, somehow I had learned or I could teach. And like, all you can do is like, and this gets back into the spirituality part of it. It's like, if you really want to teach, all you can do is just be. And you will teach from being. And, you know, I was just being in the moment. I was playing in the moment, and that was inspiring. I didn't have an agenda, like I'm trying to teach somebody something, or it was just that play. And when you play, you open up to the unknown, you know? And I think the unknown is like the birthplace of everything. And like in Hindu culture, they consider Kali like the dark goddess, and she's considered like the abyss, and she's considered like where all vibration emanates. And like the alphabet, she's like the mother of the alphabet, birthing out of the womb of like emptiness. Like a lot of people have the wrong concept about Kali, but it doesn't matter. That's a whole nother talk. But the point is, it's like out of the void, it's out of emptiness, it's out of no mind.
Exact.
It's out of like channeling, or just dropping into some, like I do this whole painting practice on people's faces, and I'll just like look into their eyes and I'll tap into like their energy on their neck and give them some Reiki, and then like, I'll just start painting, and these people will be like, I get so many different reactions from that, and that's like a whole other talk. But the point is, like, I don't know what's gonna happen. They're like, I don't even want to look at it. I just feel better. They look at it and they're like, oh my God, you did that in like a minute? Like, how, it's so complicated. Or they'll like, how did you know how to do that? Because like all the lines have to, I'm not doing the same thing on everyone's face, but it's like there's an architecture to everyone's face, but I have to be super present with them as I do it, because I'm just watching it happen through me. And that's the whole magical part, is like I'm like watching a movie. I'm just like watching the hand move.
Oh, my bad.
No, there's some like bear turd on the roof. I was just watching my hand move, and like I don't even know how it happened, but it looks good. And then, I mean, so many things just happen from that kind of exchange too.
Yes.
But again, like no mind, like I don't go in with a preconceived idea of what something should be or should look like, because I find like spirit knows best. And when you can allow yourself to be a vessel for spirit and like wisdom to come through without ego, I think that's the other thing, is like, once the ego, you are not the doer. That's like a lot of spiritual texts say that. So it's like when you don't let the ego like feel proud, like, it's important to stay humble. Like when you open up to a space of no mind, like it's important for me to stay humble. You can run your life however you want it, but for me, I found that like, it's a miracle for me too. Like, and I get more enjoyment not identifying with it.
Yes.
And just being like, wow, there is some spark of energy beyond mind that like I'm a lot, like some of my favorite paintings, like years ago when I was living in San Francisco, there was a wallpaper factory that was like closing, and like there were just like rolls and rolls of just like old wallpaper, and I would just like filled up shopping carts with them and brought them to my studio, and I would like had this long wall, and I put up these like massive like 6 feet by like 4 feet canvases, and I would just like paint, and then like time stops, and then all of a sudden you're like done, and you're like, whoa, it's dark out, and no, like, when you really like drop into that state of surrender, like it's a very beautiful, it's like, everyone's thinking that their soulmate is like one person, but really like the beloved is like everything, like everything around you. You're like constantly embraced by the beloved. And like when you really get into that space where you dissolve into the beloved and you find union with the beloved and you create from that space, that charges you up. That like, a lot of people are like, you look younger than I thought. And it's like, I don't know. I stopped believing in time, so like just embracing that timelessness. Yeah, we are here in these like limited organic meat suits that we do our best to like keep healthy, but no one knows how much time they have, and every moment is precious, and every interaction is an interaction with the beloved. There's never a moment where you're not in a deep, intimate moment
Right.
with yourself, because your external self is a reflection of your internal self.
Mm-hmm.
So you're always in that space of unity if you choose to see it that way. And I was
Yes.
telling someone this summer, I get a lot of people come to me with their problems and
While you're painting them.
Yeah, of course,
Okay.
because they feel like loving touch, and
Right.
they feel
They feel that
non-judgment,
energy.
and they open up and they
Right.
start telling me like, oh, Oliver, like no, and I'm like, and I'll give them something, either through my eyes or through my touch or some words,
Right.
or sometimes silence, or sometimes if they give me attitude, I'll give them attitude. Like, whatever it is, like that's a whole other talk about like being like water. But
Yeah.
sometimes
Being
people,
like water, exactly.
people sometimes will say what, they'll come to me with a problem, and I just let them know it's all like life is perspective. Like, and when you can, it's very simple. Like it's really simple actually. It's
Yeah,
like it's
I
about
agree.
perspective, and if you can shift your perspective, you can shift your life.
Yes.
And it's not a like, and sign up for my class, below, follow the link, and
Follow
like,
the link in the description.
Like I'm not trying to sell anyone anything.
For
it's
sure.
like and it takes some self-responsibility to own that.
Right.
And to not be able to like, yeah, there are external situations that suck. There are external factors that are creating like an external suffering. But like
Right.
a lot of times there's a lot of suffering in the world, and a lot of it is self-generated, and a lot of that external suffering onto others is created by people who are suffering inside and they have nowhere to put it, so they
Yeah.
project it externally.
Mm-hmm.
So
Because we're constantly projecting ourselves onto the outside world.
yeah,
This is why we
So-
find each other here, right now,
yeah,
speaking.
yeah.
And
I'm
walking in
grateful
nature.
to be here. It's a cold day, but
I'm grateful to be
still,
here
it's
too.
So nice to just
Yeah.
yeah, man.
And yeah, like I said, I'm thankful that I had the opportunity to cross paths with you,
Yeah.
because since then I've learned many things, and I'm continuing to learn many more things. And through these conversations, am I learning more about who you are and who what your perspective is. And I'd love for more of the world to understand that perspective, and maybe even practice seeing this way sometimes. Or
Yeah,
it's-
this is like a time capsule seed we're recording right now. And
Exact.
you never know. Maybe in 20 years someone watches this and it's just what they need to hear at that
Exactly.
moment. Like
Exact. Right.
Like that's how I believe. Like all my work.
Yes.
Like I'm so busy managing my grandfather's archive and estate. Like I don't even push my own art career or
Right.
whatever. I have like suitcases full of work.
Yeah.
And again, it's like I know I'm creating from like a universal center place. So it's like I believe my work will be valid even after I'm dead. So it's not. And when you get to a certain place in your spiritual journey, it's not about achieving things
Yes.
that you'll lose anyway. Like it's like that struggle.
Yeah.
Like I'm not interested in that. I would rather focus my energy on on the creating part.
Right.
And so yeah, time and space, man.
Time and space.
I'm grateful for like all the books I've read from like the versions of me that set those words in motion 2,000 years ago, and now I can find them in this incarnation that's born into like a body and gets kind of, imprinted by our culture.
Right.
And we all have to like kind of shake off some of these conditions that we've been born into to get
Yeah.
back to our true nature. Like
Right.
no culture is perfect, and
So what a piece of advice would you give to someone who's either listening or watching this right now to find this play? Like, what are some techniques?
Play.
Yeah, play. Like, give them some give us some homework to do after we watch this.
Yeah, I mean, look,
like from artist perspective, like from your perspective, right? And I'm also aware of the books that you're creating for children. Oliver's an author of a few.
I did
children's
one. I put
books.
Little Lad's Deep Dream. That you can follow the link to.
Okay.
But
yeah,
anyway,
I'll put that in the description.
Let's see. So, number one, you can't force. It's interesting. Okay, like there's like laughter yoga, which is kind of, sometimes you have to like fake it till you make it, because it's like
For sure.
sometimes it feels awkward to like laugh, but then you kind of get into it and it happens. So there's there's a little bit of that where you have to like start somewhere. But I think if you're forcing yourself, you can't force yourself to like look at a stick and think it's a gun. Like, it's just
right.
But I think one thing that can be helpful, like I'll give you like one technique that I used, which I kind of got from like the surrealists. So they would play this game called Exquisite Corpse.
Exquisite Corpse.
Where they would fold a piece of paper in 3 or 4, and one person would draw on the top quarter of it like a head.
All right.
And then they would like fold it over, and just wherever the necklines were or whatever it was. So it didn't have to be a face. It could be a car, and wherever the tires are, you would just put some lines over the edge of the next blank piece and hand it to the next artist in the circle.
Okay.
And they would just take those lines and draw whatever they wanted on that blank spot. So maybe they would draw like an interior of a house, but they couldn't see what was drawn before them, and then they would fold it and give it to the third artist, who couldn't see what the first or the second had drawn. And then the third artist would follow whatever lines just over the edge the second artist did, and they would, maybe draw a boot, and then it was stepping in a puddle, and then the puddle was dripping, and they would put some lines over the edge of the fourth person who didn't see the first, second, or third. And then the fourth person did whatever, and then they would open it up at the end, and it would be like a car that turned into an interior that was wearing a boot that was like, standing on a grape or whatever. I mean, who knows what it could be, but like this idea of collaboration, I think, is what I'm getting to. Is like, so I would do the thing where like, I have a friend, Corey, and we were traveling through India, and we were all like, we would just get on these long train rides, because India is full of long train rides, and I love his art. And I would do some drawings and hand it to him on paper, and he would draw on it and hand it back to me, and I would draw, and we would just keep passing it back and forth. And this teaches you a couple things, like number one, impermanence, like and letting go of like something being precious. Like sometimes you're like, this is my perfect drawing, and I don't want someone to mess it up. But it's like, if you understand that someone's already going to be destroying whatever, and they're going to give you work, and you have permission to destroy their thing, it allows something new to emerge from that space where, if I'm going to draw a vase of a perfect flower, and I'm like, wow, I'm proud, I can really render a flower in a vase perfectly. And if someone just put a, big red mark on it, you'd be like, you ruined my drawing. But if you already like have permission to do that, and then the person, scribbles out your whole vase and hands it to you, well, then maybe you like unearth some of their scribble, and you just get like a piece of the vase you like, and then you start drawing another line around it, and then you hand it back to them, and then they take that and start doing different marks and different colors on it and hand it back to you. All of a sudden, that piece can turn into something unexpected, and that, I think, collaboration, and I think the same can happen in all art forms, like music, or sometimes you can write poetry with a friend. You're like, here's you start with a word, and then and like maybe it's not going to be good aesthetically, but it's not. I think play see, the difference between play and anything else is like there's no judgment in play of value.
Yes.
Like there's no like, unless we're talking about sports and play and winners and losers, but
Right.
like otherwise play is just a free-form, open-ended thing, and if it's not good, it doesn't matter because it was just play. And
Yeah.
here's a new piece of paper. We'll start over. As soon as you like it gets serious and you want to preserve it and you start putting value on something, that like closes up,
Right.
you know, what play opens up. So that's one technique.
Nice.
Yeah.
How do you stay mindful in living in such a chaotic city, or do you use this chaos as a way of being mindful?
Well, again, it's like
It's all perspective.
it's just, you know, if you have a chaotic internal dialogue, you can be in a place like this and find the chaos
Right.
in the, oh my God, a bear could attack us, or this tree could fall on us, or maybe
Right.
we'll get lost without water, or it's getting
Yeah.
dark, or you know, like
It's
so
all how you're thinking, huh?
it comes down to perspective.
Yeah.
And like again, so you know, just to zoom out, it's like, what is your practice to find that still point within?
Yes.
Like I'll paint people in Greece in the summer at these like big party places, and I'll be like in a crazy environment externally,
Right.
but because I'm so at peace within, I'll like literally have people like falling asleep in my hand. And I like to think of like a bicycle wheel, right? And it's just like you have that spoke in the middle that the
Right.
whole wheel turns from, like,
Or the hub,
wheel of
the hub.
samsara. You could look at it like the wheel
Yeah.
of the cycle of life.
The
The
hub
more
in
you're on the
middle.
outside,
Right.
like your journey, you're going through that cycle. It's like the washing machine. You're getting bump, 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 bump. And then as you start going closer and closer to the center point, it's like a smaller and smaller turn.
Right.
And then when you get to the middle
Yes.
point, it's stillness.
It is.
It's
Right.
it's the emptiness at the center of all mandalas. You know, all the mandalas
Right.
with the Buddhist deities in embrace. It's the duality through unity. Yab yum. It's like it's all emptiness.
Yes.
It's like the center is emptiness.
Right.
So the more you can arrive at that place
Center.
of emptiness within, and then engage with the world from that place of stillness, you see everyone else's chaos and you see everyone else strung
Right.
out in their thoughts, but you're seeing it as, because you're peaceful, you aren't getting caught up in the energy that they're running.
Yes.
You're at peace, and then you can just be like, hey,
I see
slow down. you know?
yeah.
Like, what's the rush?
Right.
And maybe they're not in a space where or maybe you say that and it's like that's what they've been waiting to hear. I mean, we never know. It's like the world is doing what the world does.
Right.
Shiva Shakti.
Yes.
Shiva is consciousness, Shakti is energy. So this is how it's supposed to work. It's the cycle of life. Now it's the
Right.
winter. We have the waters running, turning into ice. It'll freeze and then it'll flow again in the spring, and the rain will come and all the buds are gonna bloom and flowers. It's like, it's perpetual. It's like change is constant. Another thing we've all heard, but it's just nature teaches us that, and
Right.
we see it in our own life. Change is constant. Like nothing is fixed. No relationship, no job, like everything that arises is due to pass away. So
Right.
like I remember when I had my first work in a show in a museum, it was like something I'd been trying to achieve my whole life. And then the next day I was like, oh, I don't feel any different. Like, oh, I finally achieved this thing. And that's, I don't know, just recognizing that was like profound for me, because so many times it's like desire runs this planet.
Yes.
And like aspiration and desire is what's fed to people through the algorithm. So people are like, oh, to be valuable in this world, I need to like achieve a thing so people recognize me and make me feel valid because I've achieved a certain state of success. So I need to go after that thing. And that starts turning a whole other wheel, like a consumer wheel. Like now, you know, I'm trying to get that watch or that whatever. So I need to work this job. So I need to like sacrifice these things in my life that made me happy because now I'm part of the hustle culture and I don't have time to go on a walk anymore because like I'm gonna try to do this and achieve this. And then oftentimes people get to that, you know, that end and they got the thing and then it doesn't even make them happy. But in the meantime, they've lost their youth or whatever it is. So, you know, when you can recognize like the pattern of culture and like kind of zoom out and find a more healthy place to engage with it, that's like a step towards like your own freedom, you know, because ultimately the most valuable thing in the world is time, because you have a limited amount and you can't buy it back. So what are you going to do with your time as you know, like I believe everything is a cycle, you know, we are eternal consciousness in these temporary bodies that has like an expiration date on them, but that doesn't change our eternal nature.
Right.
But the Oliver body and the Oliver story is temporary. But if I don't identify as Oliver, then I'm not worried about what Oliver's like achieving. It's just like the quality of my moment,
right?
You know, and when I say quality of the moment, it's like how present am I in the moment? Like that's all it is. Whether you're the richest person or the poorest person in the world, both equally have the opportunity to be present. And if you ever do like deep meditations, like that's where the juiciness of it all is.
Right.
And it's like that's available to like everyone. That's available to like literally everyone, unless you have some kind of neurological damage or you're handicapped in a way where you can't do that. But that's excluding that small section of humanity. What I'm trying to say is like that's like we can all be kings and queens in that, but very few people know how to access that,
right?
Or give themselves the time to do that because they're so busy chasing after this thing that they think they need to be valued by the external.
Right.
But once you realize the external is just a reflection of the internal, then the external really stops having as much power and sway over your choices because you're like, well, it's all self. So who am I trying to impress? Like there's like I can just relax and slow down and take it easy and create and play. But when we're set, like, I don't know, I realize at a certain point, like when you're in a race to achieve something in life, you're in a race to get in your own casket. It's like when you stop wanting anything, then all of a sudden things slow down and life gets more expansive because you're not just so fixed on achieving a certain thing. I mean, again, there are people out there that are trying to achieve things like healing cancer or whatever. Like, I'm not saying like we should all, you know, just come sit by the river and meditate. But it's like, you know, the Buddhists talk about like right livelihood, you know, it's like, what are you doing in your life to create your livelihood? And is it something you're aligned with? You know, or, you know, a lot of people do jobs that they don't like and they hate themselves for it and they try to hide it through drugs or alcohol because, you know, they're just running from like the reality that they've created. But I don't know. I just wish everyone just to like dial it back. You know, COVID was a great opportunity for people to really like check in
Yes.
and see what are they doing, and is it aligned with their highest nature.
Right.
But you know, I think you gotta stay humble, keep open,
Yes.
like allow yourself to be wrong, allow yourself to see things from multiple
Make
perspectives
mistakes.
simultaneously.
Keep making mistakes.
I mean, or just don't judge mistakes.
Right.
You know, it's like it all is perfection. We're aiming for perfection, but like if a mistake happens, to not beat yourself up about
Yes.
it and be guilty about it and let that affect, you know, if a tire was guilty about every time it hit a pothole, like it would just be flat, you know, like it's just, you got to keep on rolling.
For sure. Dude, I'm realizing so much about like why I enjoy cycling too. Because it's kind of keeping you in cadence, and like it gets you, because the wheel is spinning, so is your lungs, and so is your body, and so is your mind.
Yeah.
And like there's stillness in that spinning.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, like I'm an artist. I know things from my own perspective this
Right.
lifetime. Like I'm sure there's so many other ways to achieve oneness, whether you're running on a track and field or a cyclist, or
Yes.
you know, maybe you're a mathematician and you find God in the like the perfection of the answer of the computation. I mean,
Right.
thing is, like, this is why I love Bhagavad Gita, because, you know,
Who is this?
so this
Oh.
is Krishna's conversation with Arjuna,
Okay.
where Krishna basically is telling Arjuna, like, yo, life isn't what you think, and
Right.
like, let me lay it out for you. It's like, it's almost like a very basic guidebook to humanity that like everyone should read, because you're like, wait, why isn't this taught to everyone? It like makes so much sense. But, and it's deep, and that's a whole other podcast, but like essentially, now I'm thrown off why I brought up. Oh yeah, they're different techniques, right?
Right.
So Krishna talks about all the different types of yogas. You know, there's
Yes.
like karma yoga. You know, you can like find God through service. There's like bhakti yoga. You can find God through dance. There's like hatha yoga. You can find God through like breath and stretching. There's jnani yoga, which is you find God through like wisdom. So basically, it's like giving permission. It's like setting up like a spiritual kind of religious architecture that gives permission to follow whatever path is most suitable for their nature to find union. You know, you look at our culture and it's kind of like our way or the highway, you know, like
Yeah.
that's what I love about like Vedic culture. It's like it understands the human condition and understands that we're all different, and it gives permission for people to like do what feels right for them. So
Right.
like, yeah, I can speak as someone who's like an artist. As a cyclist, you have, you know, or rock climbing or whatever more physical things you do. And the people that are listening, they can be like, yo, I cook. You
Right.
know, like I love to cook and serve food to people. Like that's where I find community and unity. Like there's no right or wrong way to do it, but it's just about figuring out which is your way to do it authentically.
Yes.
And authentically means it's in resonance with like your nature, who you are in this lifetime. You know, another lifetime you'll be richer, you'll be poorer, you'll have bigger ears or smaller ears. You know, it's like, but this lifetime you're this specific human and you have these specific gifts. And what are they? That's for you to like uncover and explore and share and discover.
Right.
And what I think is like when you're in a place of stillness, you really see what's left after that. When all the thoughts disappear
Right.
and you're in your true essence, like there's a beingness and a knowingness that is wise about your true nature. That's not what people are going to tell you about yourself, or what culture tells you, or what your family's expectations of you are. It's like, no, this is who I am as a being. Like, if I'm not out there jogging 5 miles a day every morning, like, I don't feel good. So it's like, then or whatever it is, because when I jog, I get ideas, and then I can take those ideas and so then you create your life to like honor whatever that thing is. I don't know. These examples come to my mind, but they're meaningless. It's just like jogging, whatever. It could be anything, but it's like, yeah, just, I don't think that's taught enough in our culture or schools, that like,
Right.
or people aren't given the tools or encouragement to discover who they are. It's like, what job are you gonna do? Like, what, what school are you gonna go to get into what job to do? It's like,
Yeah.
it's focus. It's not like, who are you? Like, what are you good at? Like, what brings you happiness? What can you share with the world? It's like, what part of the machine are you gonna, be a gear for?
Yeah, I think we're in a system issue. Our issues stem from the systems that we've previously built, and I'm optimistic about the new systems that we will build through the awareness of these older systems that are slowly collapsing right now.
I mean, it's interesting, right? It's like, there are systems that are being built now, new systems like AI,
Yeah.
but they're being built with the biases of our old system,
Right.
because it's like, it's unconscious, when you have a lot of like white programmers who are writing code for something that's going to affect the whole world.
Right.
They just have their own natural biases that they might not even realize.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think there's a challenge to like, how do you build a new system? How do you build a new system without unconsciously like putting the issues of the old system, replicating them? Like, same with the whole like NFT art thing. I was like, I got into NFTs like 3 years ago because I was like, oh cool, it's a whole new form. Like, the rules don't exist here. The whole idea of gatekeepers don't exist. Like, everything that's wrong with the art world, this is a whole new thing. And then like within 2.5 years, it's like all the same systems like reappeared within the new system. So I don't know if it's about
Changing
I don't know.
the
I think
system.
utopia is kind of like, there's this idea that like, if perfection is always something external, then we're never going to be happy in the moment.
Right.
So if we're always like, oh, it's going to be better in the future, it's going to be better in the future, oh, we have to do this to change this to make this better. Okay, number one, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Sometimes you try to do something good, and then all of a sudden it creates a ripple of problems that you couldn't anticipate.
Right.
And not to say people shouldn't do anything. I think it's in our nature to create a better, more harmonious world, but also they're always going to be the archetype of the people that hijack whatever system's been created for their own power.
Right.
And that's really like, that's where we just have to recognize the reality of this realm, is that there are beings that are attracted to power, and no matter what perfect system is created by what perfect saints imagining it, like, this archetype of humans are gonna find a way to like get to places of power through whatever means necessary, because they're just interested in power. So it's, there's this photographer, Henri Cartier-Bresson. He was like a great Magnum photographer, and he was like he was like an anarchist. You know, he believed in anarchy. It's like, you know, people will just figure it out for themselves, like no rules, no laws. Now, I mean, does that really work? I don't know. But is that system? Yeah, of course people are going to be exploited. I just think that's just the dynamic. It's like a biological thing. If you extrapolate humanity and you look at it as a biological function, like everyone's archetype, they're just playing different roles that we play, that the different cells play biologically. There's some cells that replicate. There's some cells that are the digesters that destroy things. There's the cells that reinforce things. There's the cells that create the wall. There's the cells that create food, and you know, so it's like humanity really is just like a massive like biological being, you know. We're like a giant mold on the surface of a rock, you know, but the rock is Earth spinning through space. But we're all like doing our roles and dying and replicating and continuing on, and you know, it's really like when you zoom out from it, then you're like, well, what difference does it make to participate in this culture? I'm like, I think I had that thought at a young age too. It was like, well, if I just drop out and do my own thing, it's not going to stop the world. Like, the world isn't going to come crashing down because like I don't become an accountant.
Right.
You know, there's enough people here following, you know, what culture tells them to do, that there's nothing stopping me from really like embracing my own unique journey, whatever that may be. And I'm kind of living my life as an experiment, for better or worse.
I love that.
I'm like, I don't want to subscribe to like any one system of thought or any one belief system. I'm gonna figure it out for myself in the moment. And you know, some people feel more settled when they can believe in some deity or some afterlife vision, because it's too scary to consider the truth that might not be true. So they just dial into that belief system because it's fearful to embrace nothingness. For
sure.
You know? So
for sure.
But you know, look, a lot of people are really devout in their belief system, and that's great. And I think, you know, a relationship with the divine is like a really beautiful thing to cultivate, whether that's, you know, in your heart or in nature or through a book or whatever. It's only like when those beliefs start impacting other people's lives that creates like some kind of tension. So I don't know, man, you know, take it easy, slow down, play, create, but all with intention, all from like a good space.
Yes.
Like your true space, not, oh, I read this in a book, so I'm gonna do it. You know, you have to have your own experiences. My grandfather said something once that like struck me, and I didn't get it until I was older, but he was like, you know, the best artists are the ones who have something to say, you know, but they've had a rich life experience, that there's like something for them to share, you know? Like you can be super skillful but just not have anything to say. And you can also have a lot to say but not have any skills. So I don't know, you know, we're all in different,
embody authenticity.
Situations. Embody authenticity. I mean, I think that's just, you know, authenticity means no self-judgment. Authenticity means no judging of others. Because if you're not judging yourself, you're not judging others. You're not judging the external.
Right.
And if you don't feel a threat by others, then you can really be yourself in a way that allows you to be at one with all that is. and then you're authentic because there's no one to prove anything to. There's nothing to prove. You know, there's no one to judge or be judged by. If other people judge you, they're just coming from a more dualistic space, and you have to hold compassion for them.
Yeah.
So it's like freedom, you know. Authenticity and freedom are like two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. Well, thank you for all that input.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Thank you for all that data.
My download from today.
Humans of Earth. That data is years and years of experimentation through Oliver's consciousness. And this will not be the only time we will speak. So tune into the frequency of the next couple of moments in time. I can't wait to speak with you again. It was such a pleasure.
All right, bro. Good one.
Nice one. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
We'll see you guys later. Peace.